The ridicule begins. The galaxy was filled with many species, some ancient, others new, but none as proud as the Zorathi. They were the rulers, the most powerful beings in the universe, and they knew it. Their ships could slice through the void like knives through butter, and their warriors had never known defeat. In their eyes, no species could match their strength. And so, when the Zorathi gathered in their grand council hall, they laughed. Humanity, Earth's Deathworlders, had made their way into the galactic spotlight, but no one took them seriously. Earth, they mocked, was just another primitive planet filled with wild beasts, harsh environments, and fragile, weak creatures. The galaxy had seen countless species rise and fall, but none of them had made any real mark. And humans, they were the latest joke. Deathworlders, they call them. A Zorathi elder chuckled, his sharp teeth glinting in the light. A species that fights over scraps. How laughable. The rest of the council roared with laughter. To them, humanity was a curiosity, nothing more. The Zorathi believed their technology, their centuries of evolution, had made them invincible. There was no species out there that could challenge them. Across the galaxy, the humans were preparing to show the universe that they were more than just survivors of a harsh planet. But no one knew this yet. In the council hall, one particularly young Zorathi, a leader of the fleet, spoke up. "I still don't understand why we're wasting time with these humans. They can barely survive their own world. How can they be a threat to us?" The elder Zorathi's eyes narrowed. It's not about them being a threat. It's about sending a message. The galaxy needs to see that we are still the most powerful. That no one, not even these so-called Deathworlders, can stand against us. The young leader hesitated. He had been curious about the humans. They were, after all, unlike any species they had encountered before. Despite their primitive beginnings, humanity had a fierce reputation for survival. But he wasn't convinced. How could such a species possibly compare to the might of the Zorathi? Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Have you heard the latest report from the human fleet?" A Zorathi admiral spoke from the far end of the table. The room quieted. It was unusual for an admiral to speak in the council's meetings. The admiral, a tall and imposing figure with long, sweeping armor, flicked a holographic image into the air. It showed a human fleet, small in comparison to the Zorathi's vast warships, but still impressive. They were circling a distant star, engaged in an unfamiliar formation. "What is this?" the young leader asked, confused. The admiral chuckled darkly. "Apparently, the humans have decided to test their capabilities. This is their fleet." He smirked. "I'm curious to see what they think they can do with such a pathetic force." The rest of the council joined in a chorus of mocking laughter. Humanity's fleet was small. Its ships were far less advanced than those of the Zorathi or any other major species. To think that the Deathworlders could even come close to challenging the might of the Zorathi was laughable. "Let them play their games," another council member said dismissively. "We'll give them the attention they deserve." None at all. But not all of them were so sure. Lurek, a Zorathi war commander and one of the few in the council who had seen humanity up close, stared at the holographic projection with a different expression. There was something unsettling about the way the human ships moved. It wasn't the typical strategy. There was something precise, something unpredictable about their approach. "What do you suggest we do with them, Commander Lurek?" the elder asked, sensing his discomfort. Lurek hesitated. He had seen humanity's strength firsthand, how they survived in harsh environments, how they fought through impossible odds, how they pushed their limits over and over again. But the Zorathi were not the kind of people who entertained doubt. Lurek had learned to hold his tongue in these meetings, but his mind raced. He had a bad feeling about all of this. "Perhaps it's worth keeping an eye on them," Lurek said carefully. "We've underestimated them before. They might surprise us." The council silenced. For a moment, Lurek's words hung in the air. "Surprise us." The elder Zorathi let out a low, mocking laugh. If you want to waste our time with more of your concerns, Commander, do so elsewhere. The humans are no threat to us. Lurek lowered his head in respect, but couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Back on Earth, humanity had been preparing for something far greater than a battle. They knew they had been mocked. They had always been the underdogs. But now, they were ready to prove to the galaxy that they were far more than the joke everyone believed them to be. Far beyond the Council's reach, a human fleet gathered, each ship designed with an efficiency and ferocity that had been honed through decades of survival on a death world. Every human on board knew one truth: to survive, they had to be more than just warriors. They had to be ruthless, relentless, and unforgiving. And soon, they would show the galaxy exactly what that meant. The first encounter. The galaxy was still laughing. The Zorathi Council members had dismissed humanity's fleet as a joke, their ridicule still echoing through the galaxy's political corridors. For weeks, the Zorathi held meetings, their confidence growing as they planned the eventual annihilation of Earth's puny warriors. To them, the human fleet was nothing more than an insect in their path, trivial and inconsequential. But as the days passed, something began to stir in the dark expanse of space. On the outskirts of Zorathi territory, the human fleet had gathered, invisible to any other eyes. They had arrived silently, no grand displays, no flashy maneuvers. They were ghosts in the void, waiting. Every ship, no matter how small or unassuming, had a single purpose. Each commander knew that this moment was the beginning of something much greater. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about sending a message, one that would echo across the galaxy forever. The Zorathi's first mistake. It wasn't long before the first Zorathi scouts saw something unusual. A blip. Then another. The scouts' initial response was casual, as they often saw minor, unregistered signals from distant, unimportant sectors. But these signals, these tiny, seemingly insignificant ships, were moving in strange formations, patterns that no one had seen before. The scouts sent their reports, but no one paid much attention. The Zorathi were too confident in their superiority. The fleet leaders laughed it off. "Let the humans play their little games," they said. "We'll crush them with one swipe." But there was something different about this signal, something strange that started to gnaw at the back of Lurek's mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that the humans were waiting for something, and they were waiting for it on purpose. The human tactics. Unlike the Zorathi, who would have charged forward with strength and fury, humanity moved with calculated precision. The first attack came quietly. A fleet of 5 ships, barely more than shadows in the deep space. They activated their weapons systems, not to attack, but to gather information. The humans had studied the Zorathi for years, researching their technology, their weaknesses, their habits. They knew where their defenses were weakest and what routes would give them an advantage. The first ships that the humans deployed weren't there to destroy. They were there to probe, to learn. And learn they did. Zorathi ships, normally untouchable in battle, were now facing a new kind of enemy. The humans had learned the weaknesses of their armor, the quirks in their navigation systems. Every action they took was deliberate, with every move calculated to exploit the Zorathi's blind spots. The humans never acted impulsively. They were methodical, and in that methodical approach, they were terrifying. The first strike. It took only a small human vessel, the firebrand, to reveal just how deadly humanity had become. With expert precision, the firebrand slipped past the Zorathi perimeter, unnoticed by even their most advanced sensors. The small ship appeared out of nowhere, slipping between the massive Zorathi warships, and unleashed a series of EMP pulses that disabled the flagship's central systems. The Zorathi flagship, once an imposing symbol of power, now flickered and sputtered in the dark, unable to move. Its vast energy shields crackled and died. The humans had struck their first blow, and it was one that no one had seen coming. The Zorathi commanders on the flagship scrambled, their calculated arrogance now replaced with panic. The humans had outsmarted them. They hadn't engaged in direct combat. Instead, they had attacked with precision, using their knowledge of the Zorathi's own technology against them. And then, without waiting for the Zorathi to retaliate, the human fleet vanished into the darkness again. Silent, invisible, as if they were never there. Zorathi's growing fear. The initial strike lasted only minutes, but the damage was immense. The Zorathi flagship was crippled, its shields down, its weapons offline. The human fleet had barely shown its hand. And yet, the mighty Zorathi were reeling. For the first time in a long time, doubt crept into their minds. What are they? One of the Zorathi captains murmured. How did they know our weaknesses? Lurek stood silently in the corner of the bridge of his own ship, watching the scene unfold with a growing sense of unease. He knew exactly what the humans were doing. They weren't attacking out of rage or pride. They were attacking out of strategy. They weren't looking for glory. They were looking for results. And they were getting them. The Zorathi's response was immediate. The fleet regrouped, prepared to engage the human vessels in direct battle. But there was one problem. The humans weren't interested in a fair fight. They were prepared to fight dirty. They didn't need to match the Zorathi in strength. They needed to outwit them. In deep space, the humans weren't just surviving. They were thriving. The universal awakening. Back in the council chambers, the Zorathi were beginning to realize that their mockery had been premature. The humans were no longer a joke. The small attack had caused significant damage, but it was more than just the physical harm. It was the realization that humanity had learned to survive in a way no one had expected. They weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to survive against impossible odds. And every victory, no matter how small, gave them an edge. Commander Lurek, the elder Zorathi said as he turned to Lurek with a glimmer of doubt in his eyes. What did you know about the humans? Lurek's expression was unreadable. They are more than they seem, he replied quietly. We have underestimated them for far too long. The council's laughter was silenced. They had been so certain of their superiority. But the humans had just delivered the first blow. And now, the galaxy was beginning to see them not as a weak, primitive species, but as something much more dangerous. The true battle had only just begun. As the first wave of attacks faded into silence, the Zorathi were left with one undeniable truth. The Deathworlders were no longer something to be laughed at. They had proven themselves capable of far more than anyone had anticipated. And now, the universe would have to face the terrifying reality of humanity's power. The laughing had stopped, and the real fight was about to begin. The galaxy strikes back. The galaxy's laughter was fading, replaced by whispers of uncertainty. Humanity had proven themselves far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The first strike was over, but it had left a deep mark. Across the galaxy, whispers of the human fleet spread like wildfire. It wasn't just the Zorathi anymore. Every major power in the galaxy began to take notice of Earth's unexpected rise. The Zorathi were shaken, but they still believed they were the superior force. After all, they had the numbers, the ships, the weapons. How could a small primitive species stand up to them in the long run? But the first attack had shown them one thing they hadn't expected. Humans were unpredictable. The Zorathi counterattack. The Zorathi wasted no time recovering from the embarrassment of the Firebrand's attack. They quickly rallied their forces and prepared to strike back with all the might they could muster. Massive fleets of Zorathi warships moved into position, their enormous cannons primed for a decisive blow. Commander Lurek, despite his initial doubts, knew this would be the real test. We will strike with everything we have, he said, his voice cold and commanding. This is no longer just a battle for territory. This is about making sure the humans know their place in the galaxy. But even as the Zorathi prepared to engage, Lurek felt a deep unease. He couldn't shake the thought that the humans were already one step ahead. The human strategy. Far from being intimidated by the Zorathi's massive fleet, humanity had already begun executing their next phase of the plan. Their fleet, though smaller in numbers, was more agile and better equipped to fight in the void of space. Every ship, from the smallest scout to the largest cruiser, had been carefully modified for maximum efficiency in battle. The human fleet's strategy was simple but effective. Hit fast, hit hard, and disappear before the enemy could retaliate. The Zorathi relied on overwhelming force, but humanity knew how to exploit the flaws in their arrogance. On the bridge of the Apex, one of the flagship ships in humanity's fleet, Captain Sarah Taylor surveyed the unfolding situation. She knew that every second counted. "We can't afford to fight them head-on," she said, her voice firm. "We'll need to hit their supply lines, disrupt their communications, and cut off their reinforcements." "Agreed," her tactical officer responded. "We'll strike from unexpected angles, just like the last time. Let them think they're winning while we bleed them dry." Taylor's eyes glinted with determination. Humanity's strategy was about survival, but it had quickly turned into something more. A statement. The galaxy needed to understand one truth: underestimate humanity, and it would cost you everything. The first skirmish of the counterattack. The first real clash between the Zorathi and the human fleet was anything but predictable. The Zorathi fleet moved as one, their massive ships forming a near-impenetrable wall. It seemed like victory was within their grasp. But then, just as the Zorathi ships closed in on the human vessels, something unexpected happened. A small, seemingly insignificant human vessel appeared in their midst, cloaked in the blackness of space. The Zorathi fleet's sensors, designed to detect threats from a distance, failed to register the tiny ship's presence. The Shadowblade, a stealth ship that had been modified for long-range reconnaissance and surprise attacks, shot forward like a phantom, launching a series of high-velocity torpedoes directly into the heart of the Zorathi formation. The attack caught them off guard. Massive explosions rocked the Zorathi ships, crippling two of their warships before they even knew what hit them. But the humans didn't stop there. As the chaos spread through the Zorathi lines, human vessels, large and small, emerged from their hiding spots, attacking from all directions. The Zorathi commanders scrambled to respond, but the human fleet was already gone. The humans had hit them hard, disrupted their formations, and vanished into the darkness before the Zorathi could even think of retaliating. The Zorathi had been outsmarted. Again. The Zorathi realized the cost. Back on Zorath, the mood had shifted. What was once a confident and proud species was now forced to confront an unsettling reality. The humans weren't just fighters. They were tactics personified. Every engagement, no matter how small, revealed something new about the Deathworlders. "They're everywhere," one of the Zorathi generals muttered, staring at the damaged warships. "We can't catch them." Another elder spoke, his voice filled with frustration. "This cannot go on. The humans are turning our tactics against us. We need to respond with force. No more games." The Zorathi might have been the galaxy's mightiest warriors in their own eyes, but the humans had made it clear that strength alone wasn't enough to win. The Zorathi now had to face a harsh truth. The Deathworlders had learned from every failure, adapted from every loss, and grown stronger with every attack. And as the Zorathi gathered their forces for another offensive, they knew that humanity wasn't just surviving. They were thriving in the face of danger. A dark reality sets in. Meanwhile, the galaxy's other species watched from the shadows, uncertain of which side to take. The humans were becoming legends, stories of their resilience, and their devastating tactics spreading far and wide. But no one could predict where it would all lead. Would the galaxy rally together to crush humanity before they became too strong? Or would the humans rise to become the unchallenged rulers of the stars? On the eve of the Zorathi's final push, one thing was clear: the universe was on the brink of something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would have to make a choice: stand against them or fall before them. But as the final battle loomed on the horizon, there was one question that no one could answer. How much longer could the galaxy ignore humanity before the inevitable happened? The Zorathi were about to find out. The turning point. The galaxy was on the edge of chaos. The Zorathi, once the undisputed rulers of the stars, were faltering. Humanity's cunning had proved to be a force unlike any other the galaxy had encountered. What had begun as a series of small, strategic victories had escalated into a full-blown conflict that threatened to shift the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Commander Lurek watched the scenes unfold in silence, his thoughts a swirl of doubt and fear. Despite their might, despite the overwhelming force they commanded, the Zorathi were losing ground. The humans were not just surviving. They were thriving in the heat of battle, exploiting every vulnerability, every misstep in the Zorathi's once impenetrable defense. Lurek had warned them, but it was too late. The galaxy's mightiest warriors were now on the back foot, scrambling to regain control. The Zorathi's desperation. The Zorathi were not used to losing. They had dominated the galaxy for millennia, their power unchallenged, their confidence absolute. But now, as humanity's fleet swarmed through their territory, hitting them where it hurt most, their once unshakable pride began to crack. "No more half measures," one of the senior Zorathi generals declared, slamming his fist against the table. "We need to annihilate them. No mercy." The council had no choice but to listen. The time for subtlety was over. The Zorathi were preparing to unleash their full might in a final decisive battle that would crush humanity once and for all. This time, they wouldn't hold back. This time, they would show the humans what true power looked like. But as the plans for their final assault were drawn up, Lurek couldn't help but feel that something was terribly wrong. The humans hadn't fought like this for mere survival. There was something else driving them. Something deeper, and he feared that the galaxy had underestimated that will to survive. Humanity's countermove. On the human side, Captain Sarah Taylor sat at the command center of the Apex, studying the movements of the Zorathi fleet. The Zorathi were closing in, their final assault imminent. She knew this was it, the final confrontation. "Prepare for battle," she ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "We can't afford to fight them head-on. We need to outmaneuver them, strike fast, and disappear before they can react. We're not fighting for victory anymore. We're fighting for survival." Her crew, every man and woman aboard the ship, knew what was at stake. This wasn't just another battle. This was humanity's last stand against an unstoppable force. If they failed now, there would be no Earth left to defend, no future for their people. But there was one thing humanity had that the Zorathi couldn't fathom: their unwavering will to fight, no matter the cost. The clash of titans. The day of reckoning arrived. The two fleets, one vast and overwhelming, the other small but cunning, met in the cold void of space. The Zorathi were ready to crush humanity's fleet once and for all. Their warships, massive and imposing, lined up in perfect formation, ready to unleash their devastating power. But as the first salvo of energy blasts flew across the battlefield, something unexpected happened. The humans didn't engage directly. Instead, they scattered. The Zorathi fired upon empty space, their weapons vaporizing the cold void where human ships had once been. The humans had used their knowledge of the Zorathi's tactics against them, drawing them into a trap. They were fighting on their own terms now. The Zorathi fleet was huge, but it was clumsy. Its ships were fast, but not agile. And as the humans darted between the massive warships, using their smaller, more nimble vessels to strike from all angles, the Zorathi's strategy began to crumble. One by one, human ships disabled Zorathi warships, sending them spiraling into the dark. EMP blasts disabled shields, while precision laser strikes tore apart vital systems. The Zorathi were used to overwhelming their enemies with sheer force, but the humans weren't playing by the same rules. It was no longer a war of power. It was a war of strategy, and humanity was winning. A Zorathi leader falls. In the heart of the battle, the flagship of the Zorathi fleet, once an invincible symbol of their superiority, was in flames. A small human ship, the Vanguard, had pierced through the heart of the Zorathi formation and launched a series of targeted strikes at the core of the flagship. The shields buckled, the engines failed, and the massive warship began to break apart. The leader of the Zorathi fleet, General Vortak, watched in horror as his command center exploded around him. His finest warriors were falling, his fleet was shattering, and the humans, those fragile creatures from a death world, were the ones responsible. For the first time in his life, General Vortak felt fear. Retreat. Vortak barked. We cannot win this battle. Fall back. But it was too late. The humans were relentless. Every Zorathi ship that tried to retreat was pursued, every escape route blocked by human ships moving with terrifying speed. The Zorathi fleet, once the mightiest in the galaxy, was in disarray. The tide turns. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the humans were not just surviving. They were winning. The Zorathi, once certain of their inevitable victory, were now fighting to survive. The humans' tactical genius had completely turned the tide of the battle. Lurek watched the destruction unfold from his own ship, torn between admiration and horror. Humanity had fought like cornered animals, using every resource, every bit of knowledge, to outsmart the Zorathi. They had taken their pride, their strength, and turned it into a weapon. And now, they were on the brink of victory. Commander Lurek, a subordinate, said urgently, "The Zorathi fleet is in full retreat. The humans are unstoppable." Lurek stared out at the battlefield, his mind racing. The Zorathi had underestimated humanity for far too long. The galaxy had laughed at them, mocked them, dismissed them as nothing more than a primitive species. But now, the humans were showing the galaxy what it truly meant to fight for survival. And in that fight, they had become something no one could ignore. The galaxy watches. As the Zorathi fleet retreated into the darkness, the human fleet stood victorious. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the once untouchable Zorathi were forced to withdraw. The humans had won. They had survived against impossible odds, and now, the galaxy would have to reckon with the consequences. For humanity, this was only the beginning. The battle for survival had turned into a battle for supremacy. And now, the entire galaxy would know what it meant to challenge Earth's Deathworlders. The laughter had stopped, and the real story of humanity was just beginning. The silent invasion. The galaxy was still reeling from the staggering defeat of the Zorathi, their once proud fleet shattered. Humanity, the Deathworlders, they had so arrogantly mocked, had emerged victorious in a conflict that many believed would be their downfall. The galaxy's great powers were left to wonder. How had this small, unassuming species managed to topple the might of the Zorathi Empire? And more importantly, what did this mean for the future? In the aftermath of the battle, humanity did not take a victory lap. They didn't celebrate, didn't gloat. They simply regrouped, as if they had always expected this outcome. The quiet intensity with which they carried themselves only added to the tension in the air. Something far more ominous was happening, and the galaxy couldn't quite figure it out. Humanity wasn't done. They weren't even close. A growing presence. In the weeks that followed the destruction of the Zorathi fleet, strange things began to happen. First, it was the subtle shifts in space traffic. Small fleets of human vessels, unmarked and unidentified, began appearing at various points around the galaxy. They weren't making any moves toward conquest. They weren't launching attacks, but their presence was unmistakable. The humans were everywhere. The Galactic Council, which had previously been dismissive of Earth's role in the grand scheme of the universe, now found themselves facing the impossible reality. Humanity wasn't just here to fight. They were here to stay. Where are they going? The Grilfar ambassador asked, his voice quivering with unease. They're everywhere, and they're not attacking. What do they want? The council was silent. No one had an answer. Humanity's quiet strength. What the galaxy didn't understand was that humanity's victory wasn't just a product of war. It was a product of relentless preparation. For years, Earth had been working in silence, gathering knowledge, building alliances, and most importantly, developing their technology. Their first victory over the Zorathi was only the beginning of their true strategy. In every sector, humans had planted their influence. Subtle, quiet, and invisible to the naked eye, they had infiltrated the galactic networks, quietly studying and learning every secret. They had learned how to navigate the galactic economy, how to manipulate trade routes, how to influence political structures without ever drawing attention to themselves. Even now, as the galaxy watched, humanity was preparing something bigger than anyone could have imagined. And the galaxy didn't even know it. The great galaxial silence. As time passed, things began to get stranger still. Space stations that were once bustling with activity suddenly fell silent. Trade routes that had always been filled with ships grew eerily quiet, and it wasn't just the Zorathi. Entire civilizations, ones who had been strong, proud, and untouchable, started reporting strange disruptions within their ranks. Communications went dark. Ships went missing. At first, the galaxy thought it was a coincidence, but as more reports came in, it became clear. Something was wrong. Something was missing. Something was happening, and the one species that had been quietly building in the background was nowhere to be found. Humanity. The first disappearance. The first to vanish was the Rigari, a peaceful species known for their trade and diplomatic neutrality. They had once been the go-between for many intergalactic negotiations, but when their planet went silent, no one could explain why. A Rigari vessel, on its way to meet a diplomatic envoy, simply disappeared without a trace. No distress signal, no signs of conflict. The Rigari had always been peaceful, and there were no enemies nearby that could have taken them down. And then it happened again. Another species, another fleet, another disappearance. This time, it was the Skier, a military powerhouse. For generations, they had maintained one of the most feared fleets in the galaxy. But when they launched an expedition to investigate the Rigari's disappearance, they too vanished without a trace. No explosions, no signs of combat, just empty space. The galaxy was starting to panic. There was no war. There were no attacks. Yet, entire fleets were disappearing, and no one knew where they had gone. A galaxy on edge. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting, desperate to find answers. The first theory was that there was a new unknown threat emerging from the outer rim. Perhaps a new species, more terrifying than the Zorathi, was hunting down the galaxy's most powerful factions. But that theory quickly fell apart. No ships had been spotted, no signs of battle, no debris from destroyed ships. The disappearances were completely clean. There was only one possibility left, one no one wanted to consider. Humanity was behind it all. Are we really ready to admit it? The Gathar representative asked, his voice trembling. Could the humans be systematically removing us from the galaxy? No one had an answer. A terrifying truth. The truth, however, was far worse than anyone had imagined. Humanity wasn't just trying to dominate the galaxy through military force. They had never been interested in domination. What they were doing was far more chilling. The humans had become like ghosts. They had learned how to make entire civilizations vanish without ever firing a shot, without ever even being seen. They had mastered the art of infiltration and subversion. One by one, species were disappearing, not because they were defeated, but because they were quietly erased from existence. It wasn't war. It was the slow, silent, methodical removal of anyone who stood in their way. And now, the galaxy realized what it had feared all along. Humanity had never been the underdog. They had never been weak. They had simply been biding their time, waiting, watching, learning. And when the time came, they would strike, not with overwhelming force, but with quiet, unrelenting precision. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for control. and the galaxy had no idea how deep humanity's plans really went. A final warning. Humanity's quiet invasion had begun, and the galaxy had no choice but to watch as their once dominant species were systematically erased. A few scattered ships were all that remained of the Zorathi, the Rigari, and the Skir, lost without a trace, swallowed whole by the shadow of humanity's reach. The message was clear. Underestimating humanity would no longer be an option. The galaxy had laughed at them. They had mocked the Deathworlders. And now they were paying the price. As the last of the galactic powers scrambled to organize and defend themselves, they could only ask one question: how much longer until humanity came for them? The Empire strikes back. The galaxy had been shaken to its core. Humanity's quiet rise to power had begun with calculated moves, unseen by most of the universe. But now, the consequences were apparent. Entire fleets had vanished, species had disappeared without a trace, and those who remained found themselves grappling with an overwhelming sense of dread. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now it was paying the price. For centuries, the powerful species of the galaxy had dominated, confident that their superior technology and might would keep them at the top of the cosmic hierarchy. But humanity's unrelenting rise had shown them that power could come from the most unexpected places, and humanity was far from done. The silent threat. In the wake of the disappearances, the Galactic Council convened in a desperate attempt to understand the new reality they faced. The once proud leaders of the galaxy, who had dismissed humanity as insignificant, were now terrified. They knew they had to act, but what could they do? They had no idea where humanity's next move would come from. "What are we facing?" the Koran ambassador asked, her voice strained with anxiety. "They've taken down the Zorathi, the Rigari, and the Skir. How do we even begin to stop them?" The room was filled with murmurs of uncertainty. The truth was undeniable. Humanity wasn't just an emerging threat anymore. They were a powerful force that had proven time and time again they could outmaneuver and outthink any species in the galaxy. Their power wasn't just in their weapons. It was in their intelligence, their ability to adapt, and most of all, their relentless drive to succeed. "We need a strategy," the Varna representative said firmly, breaking the silence. "If we can't fight them head-on, we'll have to outsmart them. The humans may be cunning, but they're not invincible. If we strike quickly, we may still have a chance to regroup." The counterattack. While the Galactic Council scrambled to devise a counter-strategy, humanity was already making its next move. The silence that had followed their victories was no accident. The humans were biding their time, carefully orchestrating the next phase of their plan. They knew the galaxy was now fully aware of their presence, but they had no intention of retreating. If anything, humanity was preparing for something far more devastating than anyone could imagine. In the quiet depths of space, a series of hidden human fleets, each built with the same stealth technology that had helped them win their battles, began to converge. These fleets weren't large by galactic standards, but their purpose was far more dangerous. They were designed for infiltration, for striking from the shadows, and for neutralizing any threats before they could escalate. The humans had learned from their past victories, and now they were ready to escalate their campaign. The galaxy wasn't prepared for what came next. A new weapon. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their ships, their technology, or their military might. It was their ingenuity. They had quietly developed something far more terrifying. A weapon that didn't just destroy, it erased. Entire planets, entire civilizations could be wiped out in an instant without anyone even knowing what had happened. The first target was a remote mining colony, an insignificant dot on the galaxy's map. The colony's population wasn't large, but it was enough to make a statement. The humans launched their first strike, an untraceable, nearly invisible pulse of energy that obliterated everything in its path. There was no explosion, no warning, just an empty void where the colony had once been. The galaxy was paralyzed with fear. The humans had shown their true power. They didn't need to conquer or fight their enemies. They could erase them with a single, silent strike. The technology behind this weapon was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was so advanced that even the most sophisticated systems in the galaxy couldn't detect it until it was too late. The galaxy's response. For the first time in history, the galaxy united against a common enemy. The once fragmented factions set aside their differences, realizing that they could no longer afford to fight amongst themselves. Humanity had become a true existential threat. The Council agreed on a final course of action. They would deploy the combined might of the galaxy's military fleets and resources to wipe humanity from the stars. They knew this wouldn't be easy. The humans were everywhere, quiet, elusive, and terrifyingly effective. But they had to try. They had no choice. The fate of the galaxy depended on it. The warships of every major faction in the galaxy prepared for the largest operation the galaxy had ever seen. They would hunt humanity down and end their rise to power before it was too late. The hunt begins. The galaxy's fleets scattered across the stars, hunting for any sign of humanity's fleets or bases. They searched every corner of the known galaxy, convinced that the humans couldn't hide forever. Their arrogance, however, would be their downfall. The human fleets, small but deadly, continued to operate in secret. They had no intention of allowing the galaxy to find them. Instead, they turned the tables on their pursuers, launching surprise attacks and sabotage missions against the very fleets sent to hunt them. Each time a fleet thought it had cornered humanity, it would disappear into the darkness, leaving nothing but chaos in its wake. At first, the galaxy's forces were confident. They believed they had humanity outnumbered, but the humans had already proven they could outthink and outmaneuver their enemies. Time and time again, the galaxy's fleets found themselves outwitted, overpowered, and humiliated. The humans were using the galaxy's own weaknesses against it. The more they hunted, the more they lost. The galaxy had awakened the true power of humanity. And now, there was no going back. A final push. Desperation set in. With every fleet lost, with every secret operation disrupted, the galaxy's leaders were left with one last option: a full-scale, all-out war. There would be no more subtlety, no more secret operations. If humanity would not be erased in the shadows, then the galaxy would bring the fight to them. But even as they prepared for their final assault, the galaxy knew one thing: the humans would be ready. The Deathworlders had never fought fair, and they wouldn't start now. The Empire strikes back. As the galaxy's final push began, it became clear: humanity's time had come. They had been underestimated, mocked, and pushed into a corner, but they had risen far beyond anyone's expectations. Now, the universe was about to witness just how powerful humanity could be when it fought for its survival. The Deathworlders would never give up. They would never be erased, and the galaxy would have to face the full force of their wrath, the wrath of humanity. The final battle was coming. After months of secretive strikes, subterfuge, and growing tensions, the galaxy's leaders knew they had no other choice but to confront humanity head-on. They had underestimated the Deathworlders for far too long, and now they were going to pay the price. The vast fleets of the galaxy's greatest powers gathered, ready for one final push that would, they hoped, end the human threat once and for all. But no one was prepared for what came next. The Great Galactic Convergence. As the galaxy's forces amassed in the outer rim, preparing for a massive coordinated assault, something unexpected occurred. Humanity didn't scatter, didn't retreat into the depths of space. Instead, they gathered. Every human fleet, every piece of technology, every soldier who had quietly bided their time over the past years converged on a single point, a point no one had anticipated. It wasn't a battle in the traditional sense. It wasn't a war of sheer force or firepower. What the galaxy had failed to understand was that humanity didn't just use weapons. Humanity used everything. The galactic forces were in position, but they weren't attacking. They were waiting. Humanity had brought the full weight of its power into the most unexpected confrontation the galaxy would ever witness. The Silent War. It wasn't long before the first strike occurred, not a shot fired, but a crippling blow to the heart of the galaxy's communication networks. In one coordinated effort, humanity had infiltrated every major communication hub, broadcasting one simple message across every screen, every ship, and every station. You never stood a chance. The silence was deafening. One by one, the fleets began to report in. Their systems were failing. Communications went dark. The galactic powers had underestimated humanity's ability to disrupt the very foundation of their dominance. Every system, every defense, and every weapon was compromised. The human fleets, having never fully revealed their technological advantage, had used their most devastating weapon yet, complete and utter control over galactic infrastructure. And now, the galaxy was paralyzed. The human uprising. As the galaxy's fleets lost control of their systems, humanity made its move. The Deathworlders didn't fight with raw aggression or mindless destruction. They fought with intelligence, precision, and patience. They had spent years infiltrating every corner of the galaxy, embedding themselves into the fabric of galactic society. Now, humanity's grand plan was unfolding. Human soldiers, equipped with advanced technology and unwavering resolve, stormed key galactic command centers. They didn't need to overwhelm their enemies with brute force. Instead, they used the element of surprise, taking control of vital locations before the enemy could react. Entire military outposts fell within hours. Stations designed to fend off invaders were now in human hands. But humanity's true power wasn't in their ability to fight. It was in their ability to make the galaxy see the truth that they, the so-called Deathworlders, were no longer underdogs. They were the new rulers of the galaxy, and their reign would be unchallenged. The Great Awakening. The galaxy's leaders, once so certain of their superiority, now understood the full extent of humanity's power. It was not just their military strength that had turned the tide. It was their sheer will to survive, to evolve, and to dominate. Humanity had faced extinction many times throughout their history and had always come out stronger. Their entire existence was built on the principle of resilience. They had adapted to every challenge, overcome every obstacle, and now they stood as the ultimate power in the universe. In the final moments of the galactic leaders' desperate fight back, they realized something crucial. They had underestimated humanity for so long that they had failed to see what was truly happening. They had already lost. The game had been over the moment humanity decided it was time to take control. And now, with no other options left, the galaxy's leaders faced the terrifying reality. They had no power, no influence, and no way of stopping the rise of humanity. The final ultimatum. As the galaxy fell into chaos, humanity sent out one last message, not to the leaders of the galaxy, but to every species in the universe. We are the Deathworlders. We are the survivors. And now, we are the rulers of the galaxy. Join us or stand aside. For the first time in galactic history, the power had shifted. What had once been a scattered, isolated species on the fringes of space had now become the galaxy's supreme force. Humanity wasn't just a new power. They were the new order. A new beginning. The galactic powers, defeated and humiliated, had no choice but to submit. There would be no war, no more resistance. Humanity, having proven its supremacy, now controlled the galaxy. What had once seemed impossible was now reality. The Deathworlders had not just won. They had reshaped the entire galactic structure. And as humanity ascended to its rightful place, a new era began. An era in which the galaxy would not be ruled by the mighty or the technologically advanced, but by those who had endured, who had fought, and who had never given up. The galaxy was now theirs to govern, to rebuild, and to lead. And in the years to come, the galaxy would learn one undeniable truth. Never again would humanity be underestimated. The Deathworlders had proven that they were, and always would be, the galaxy's most terrifying and unstoppable force.